Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is term 2A. We are looking at class 22, assignments 33 and 34, and I am Jillian Percy. Here's our contact information. Please send any assignments to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. Please include your full name, course name, assignment number, and name. If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good copy, please label which is which and include them both in the same email. My Facebook and my YouTube are the exact same address, capital G, capital P, ERCY space, capital W, AHSA. My email is jillian.percy@nnecschools.org, and the office number is 1-800-667-3703. My extension is 2211. If you need to take a photograph of an assignment, please send it as an attachment. If you send it directly as the email, it's very hard for us to print off, and it doesn't end up showing up properly on the computer. Okay, let's take a look at what work we have for today. Today we are going to understand the concept of contractions and recognize common contractions. Understand the concept of an audience and identify the audience of our piece of writing. Identify how people change various aspects of their communication to suit their audience. Understand the concept of a larger subject and a smaller topic and generate ideas for topics. Understand the main purposes behind any piece of writing and identify the purpose behind specific pieces of writing. Okay, looking at contractions, we were talking last week about using apostrophes to show possession with nouns. Probably not last week, probably just yesterday, I think. We also use apostrophes to show that some letter or letters are missing when creating contractions. So when we talk, we often push two words together to create one new word, and we drop a sound or two as we do this. And then in writing, we put an apostrophe in place of the missing letter to show that we kind of know that it's missing, right? So I have becomes I've. We use a lot of contractions in English, and here we're going to go over some of the most common contractions. This is not all of them because there's a lot. Sometimes when we don't use contractions in our writing or speech, it can make our words sound a little stiff or formal, which sometimes is what we want if like a business writing. Other times you may want to have your writing to sound more casual and informal, in which case you'd want to have more contractions. So you use them as needed, basically. So these ones are present tense. They're talking about things that are happening right now, like I and am equals I'm going to the store. It plus is equals it's windy today. He plus is he's my brother. She plus is she's swimming tonight. You can see it looks like an S, but ends up sounding like a Z for some reason. I don't know why. Who plus is who's hungry. I plus have is I've been running. You plus have you've been sick. You plus are you're on the team. We plus are we're. This is one of the hardest ones because it looks so close to like two other words. It looks like where and were. And so you got to pay attention to that apostrophe there, or it really changes things. We're done our work. They plus are they're coming home. These ones are all future tense ones. They're talking about something that's going to happen in that future because the O at the end of the contraction is short for will, and will is talking about future tense. I plus will is I'll be flying home soon. He plus will, he'll be happy to see you. She plus will, she'll be happy, she'll be ready soon. That's another one that's tricky because it looks like shall. You plus will is you'll need a calculator. We plus will equals we'll go to the park later. They plus will equals they'll be ready at 5 o'clock. It plus will, it'll be home soon. I'm not sure what, some terrible dog. It'll be home soon. That one always sounds a little bit funny to me. Now this page is two different types of contractions. And the thing is, they have different words in them when they start as whole words, but they both get contracted to the exact same phrase. So you kind of have to know, based on the context of the sentence, what they were aiming for. Because one is when you're joining those pronouns with the word would. And would is a conditional word, right? It's talking about the future, like, I would like to go with you if I have the money. I would be at the site by now if the rain hadn't come. Sometimes it talks about the past, like, I would have gone if I had known you wanted me to go, but it's a very conditional kind of word. Whereas had is generally the past, like, I had finished my work. I had pizza for breakfast. So they actually mean very different things, and you need to be conscious of that when you're looking at the contraction as to which one it was there. So like here I've got I would like to go to the park tomorrow if I had time. I'd like to go to the park tomorrow if I had time. I had driven there yesterday. I'd driven there yesterday. So I would or I had both get shortened to I'd. He would or he had both go to he'd. She would or she had goes to she'd, which looks a lot like shed if you don't notice the apostrophe. They would or they had gets shortened to they'd. You would or you had can get shortened to you'd. We would or we had get shortened to we'd, not like the other kind. It would or it had would be it, which is a very odd one. I don't think I've ever heard anybody use that one, but it's logically available. Okay. Now, common contractions can also be linked with the word not to indicate the opposite of whatever the verb it is linked with. So do plus not equals don't, can plus not equals can't, will plus not equals won't, have plus not equals haven't, did plus not equals didn't, was plus not is wasn't, were plus not is weren't, had plus not is hadn't, would plus not is wouldn't, could plus not is couldn't, should plus not is shouldn't, has plus not is hasn't, is plus not is isn't, and are plus not is aren't. Sorry, a lot of lists today. I know it's not the most exciting thing to listen to. Now, these kind of negative contractions are sometimes used at the beginning of a sentence, and they're usually used in kind of a funny way where it almost assumes that the answer is negative and the person is wondering why. Like if you say, you come home and there's a bunch of dishes in the sink, people will like turn to whoever's supposed to do them and like, didn't you do the dishes yet? And you're kind of demanding like an answer, like, why didn't you do the dishes yet? Or, isn't he done his homework? Aren't you coming with us? Weren't you scared? Can't you find your keys? These are kind of questions that are asking for a little bit of explanation. They're sort of implying there's confusion. There's something they thought was going to get done that didn't somehow get done or didn't happen in some way. Okay, and one more thing. This doesn't come up a whole lot, but when we're saying he would have, it sounds like the word of in English, O-V-O-F, but it's a contraction. It's the short form for have. So if I was breaking it back down into the three main words, it would be he would have, not he would of. Because would and of don't go together in English. Would needs to be in front of a verb. It can't be in front of a preposition. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because would is describing how you're going to perform a certain type of action, and there's no action involved in the word of. She would have, not she would of. It should have, or sorry, I switched here. Would, could, and at the end I switched them all. Would, could, and should are all the same kind of idea in terms of they have the same base. And so the same mistake gets made with each one of them, I find. Okay. Sorry. So for clarity, for anyone who's on the radio, He would have becomes he would have. She could have becomes she could have. It should have becomes it should have. Of is never used as part of a contraction in that way. Okay. So here are some examples, and we can take a look at these and kind of figure out what contractions would make sense in these places. Mom said we something go on our own. So don't go on our own. Doesn't quite work there. Didn't go on our own. I would say can't go on our own is what would make sense there. Just gonna kind of move it over. Okay, that'll work. Betty said that something go with us tonight. She won't go with us tonight. Probably won't. Spinach is slimy. So I don't want any for dinner. Sorry, my mic tangled there. I am feeling sick, so I something be going to work. I wasn't going to be going to work. I'm trying to lose weight, so I something eat the cake. Didn't, maybe that might work. I didn't eat the cake. I thought John would be there, but I'm going to grab wasn't and use it twice here. He wasn't. I don't like that teacher, so I haven't been going to class. Something you're going to eat any dinner. Aren't you going to eat any dinner? Why didn't you go to the store and get milk like she asked? I'm not sure why that one doesn't make any sense there. I'm just going to take that one right off. Okay. So moving on to our assignment. Assignment 33 is about form, style, and tone. It's worth 14 marks. So we're going to read the following passage and try to figure out what it's saying. And then we're going to answer the questions that follow about the form, style, and tone for it. Okay. Wassa Distance Education Center is cognizant of the strengths, values, and traditions passed down through the generations of First Nations people. We have honored those who have walked ahead of us, have respect for those who walk with us, and consider those yet to come. Wassa Distance Education Center encompasses the traditional education process by blending culture, tradition, information, and technology. This philosophy provides opportunities to demonstrate our commitment to the values, needs, and the learning styles of our communities. Our goal is to continue developing and implementing an education system that always takes into account the next generations. We will meet the needs of the present without compromising future generations and educate the people we serve so they will succeed in the modern world. Okay, so we've studied how to write different types of writing. However, we haven't really done it the opposite array around, like what they're asking us to do now, which is look at a piece of writing and decide what format is in. Some formats are a lot easier to recognize than others. For example, a lot of people find poetry easy to recognize because it's so different from other types of writing. So hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So if somebody were to ask you, well, like, how do you know what this is? I think most people would be able to say, well, this isn't really like it isn't a paragraph that's trying to teach something. It's not persuasion. It's definitely a poem. And part of it would be the sentence structure, right? There's no periods being used or commas. It's very beautiful language. It's kind of creating an image rather than telling us things. That's a fairly easy format. So here we're looking at this, and it's very obviously a letter, and it says business letter, but how do we know if it didn't say it up there? How would we know it was a letter? Well, we would look at the format. Up here, we've got an address, and then a receiving address, and then a greeting, dear Mr. Doe. Right away, that would tell you if it was a letter, even if nothing else was there. And then it's very clearly written in the first person, like letters are, and they're discussing what they want to have happen, what the issue is. And then it's being signed. So that format, like literally how it's set up, helps to tell you what kind of writing it is. Over here, what kind of writing is this, right? Up here it says Indie Farmers Market, eat fresh, buy local. We are open online all day, every day to bring the best of fresh product offerings to you or your family. We operate based on core values that are basic yet essential to reaching our goal of enhancing the lives of our families, our communities, and our state through encouraging you to, that's funny, it kind of like drops off there and suddenly says seasonal item and talks about the jam. I think somebody forgot a word there or something. Anyways, what kind of writing is this? It's clearly an ad, right? They're trying to sell you, hey, here's our farmers market. We're so fresh and amazing. And we're helping you enhance your lives, right? We recognize the format of big graphics selling things, a nice image, lots of persuasive words. Okay. This is talking about Metier Bank, fraud protection, online safety tips, protecting yourself and your family is your first responsibility. Here is safety tips about reviewing your accounts regularly, protecting your computer. I would say this might, oh, look up top. It's got Banknotes, Volume 17, Issue 3. This looks like it's some sort of business newsletter, right? A lot of newsletters might put out an internal one or an external one for their customers or their shareholders, kind of keeping them in the loop with the business. It's sort of a little bit of a form of persuasive writing, but it's a very specific sort of format. Okay, so here we have a mission statement. I don't know if you've ever heard of a mission statement before. It kind of became very popular with a guy named Stephen Covey, who began to write about how businesses needed to base their I don't know, their mission, philosophy, and atmosphere kind of on certain core principles. And once everybody in the company kind of understood those core principles, then people would be working together in more harmony. That's kind of the ideal, anyways. So here, this is this person's or this business's mission statement. The business is Vision Air and Sea Services. So I think they sell transport stuff. We exist to provide safe, customized, on-time, and reliable logistics services that will lead to satisfaction and loyalty of the customers. We value our employees and enable them to develop and utilize their full potential, aligned with the organization objectives and values. We integrate improvements in our system to guarantee our stockholders of continuous profitability. We address our responsibility to the public and practice good citizenship by involving ourselves in community-related projects. So this is a pretty typical mission statement. It talks about what we, the company, are going to do to help the customer, and they usually expand it out. You can see they talk about stockholders and they talk about the public and the community. So it talks about what kind of values they hold, what kind of behaviors they're going to do, and sometimes how they're going to do it. So it is another type of persuasive writing. It's kind of aimed inward towards the employees and also aimed outward towards the customers, okay? So here is today's assignment. Okay, remember that we're looking back at this. This is what we just read. What kind of business writing is this? Tried really hard to give you a hint there. Many businesses and organizations use this form of writing. So you would say, this form of writing is, and then you would tell me. Here are some possible business formats: advertising, persuasive, mission statements, informative, letters, memos. Of all the examples we looked at, which type did it seem like? Number 2, what is the style of this piece of writing? Formal or informal, and why? And 2 marks for this. I have to say, I don't really like this question. This word has many different meanings to different people, and it bothers me that the author of this unit didn't give a definition to make sure all the readers were on the same page with how they meant it. Style is really often defined as the combination of all the decisions a writer makes about their tone, their voice, their sentence structure, their paragraphing. However, in this question, they seem to be really focusing on just one main idea. Is the writing formal or informal? I just want to point out for those who might be going on to another like level of education, like college, style can often mean a lot more than that, okay? So here is a formal style, okay? Formal style is often used between colleagues or relating to customers in business, newspapers, professional, and academic settings. We'll use proper sentence structure and paragraphing, often uses deliberately high vocabulary, sounds like a snooty teacher talking. So this is formal. It is formal in a somewhat humorous manner, but I would say this is still formal. Someone else might disagree though. If all the world's a stage, Fashion Month has long been the costume cupboard, a trove of froth and tulle, sparkle and glitter, designed to catch the eye and hold it. A dressing up box that, although delightful and entertaining to lose yourself in, doesn't always hold up in reality. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. We could all use some fabulous escapism from time to time. But ultimately, when you venture out from the sanctity of your wardrobe, you need to be able to live in these creations, at least in the physical realm. We'll get into the virtual later. For spring summer 2024, I have to applaud designers for creating collections that, yes, hold beauty, but also have a place in the everyday. It's a very formal style. They've written in very formal paragraphing and sentencing, and it sounds very academic. So here's a more informal style. Informal styles like what you would see in text messages, cards, notes, between friends and family, someone wanting to seem down to earth. It may even use incorrect sentence structure, like incomplete thoughts for emphasis. More use of slang, abbreviations. Basically, sounds like your favorite cousin or your best friend talking to you. So here's an informal example, also talking about the spring 2024 fashion. This was all based on kind of a picture of some of the newest fashions, just, so they're similar kind of pictures, but different styles. The new grandpa cheek is too funny. Who would wear that? LOL. The ultra girly Barbie look is not me either. The preppy look is too old school. I don't work in the office. My outfits need to be a little more cash, but I ain't wearing my grandpa's clothes yet. Fashion trends for spring this year? Whatever is in my closet. So here I was picturing somebody either talking to a friend or maybe like somebody writing on a blog and trying to seem very casual and very young, right? So thinking of that, how does keep on flipping back to it here. Does that seem more formal or more informal? Okay. Hang on. What is the tone of this piece of writing? Is it more serious or is it more casual? Okay. Tone is a funny one. Tone is a little bit like atmosphere. Um, we use tone in a sense of like it's such an oral word to me. It's funny to hear it in this kind of sense. Like, if you're young and your parent talks to you in a very certain tone, you know what they mean, right? The same kind of thing can come across in our writing. Hang on a sec. Aside from individual word choice, the overall tone or attitude of a piece of writing should be appropriate to the audience and purpose. The tone may be objective or subjective, logical or emotional, intimate or distant, serious or humorous. It can consist mostly of long, intricate sentences, of short, simple ones, or something in between. Good writers frequently vary the length of their sentences. So this is another instance where I feel like the question's using it in a very limited way that is kind of confusing because tone actually means a lot more than what they've given us as choices. One way to achieve the proper tone is to imagine a situation in which the words that were written. So a journal might be like a conversation with a close friend where there's the freedom to use slang or other casual forms of speech. A column for a newspaper may be more like a high school graduation speech. It could be more formal, but still be funny or familiar. An academic paper is like a formal speech at a conference. Being interesting is desirable, but there's no room for personal digressions or familiar usage of slang words. In all these cases, there's still some freedom of self-expression while adapting to the audience. And in the same way, writing should change to suit the occasion. Now, sometimes tone and voice are used interchangeably in case you're more familiar with that phrase. Anything you write should always have your own voice, something that makes your writing sound uniquely you. A personal conversation with a friend differs from a speech given to a large group of strangers, but it's still coming from who you are, just maybe sort of different parts of you or an edited part of you. So just as you speak to different people in different ways, and yet you're still yourself, so the tone of your writing can vary with the situation, while the voice, the essential thoughts and expression, they're still your own. So here's an example of how two different artists kind of conveyed the same concept about not notes, but the space between notes. Says Miles Davis says, don't play what's there, play what's not there. And then Arthur Schnabel, who's a pianist, writes, the notes I handle no better than many pianists, but the pauses between the notes, that is where the art resides. They're both talking about how the negative space in music, how you put the notes together or spread them apart, is part of what creates good music. But they said it in very different ways. One is very short, straightforward, kind of punchy. One is deliberately sort of longer, more poetic. So that's the idea of kind of tone. Yeah, we're gonna do this. Okay, so why is tone so important in a story? It's especially important in story. It's not as it is important in writing for yeah, it's important in nonfiction writing too, I guess. I was gonna say something else, but I think I disagree with myself now. Tone can help engage your target audience and elicit a particular feeling and emotion in the reader. In business writing, a more formal tone can help you present an organized, confident attitude. In storytelling, a casual or playful tone can help bring your reader closer to your characters. Because the reader can't see the writer's facial expression or body language when they're conveying an idea, the author's word choice and writing style is essential. You can also choose a certain tone to help underline your story's theme. For example, a tragedy might favor a melancholy or introspective tone, while a romantic comedy might favor cheerful and humorous tones. By mindfully choosing the right tone for your story, you can gently encourage the reader to feel and experience the story in a certain way. So here, they kind of went more into detail of different kinds of tones. And in here, they're kind of talking about tone a little bit in terms of like emotion, like cheerful. I can't wait to get to the party. Pessimistic. This party is going to be a disaster. Hopeful. This party could change everything for me. Optimistic. We're going to have a great time and absolutely nothing will go wrong. Melancholy. I remember the parties of my younger days. Oh, things were simpler then. Arrogant. I hope they realize how lucky they are to have me on their guest list. Reverential. Oh, being included tonight is an incredible honor. Fearful. But what if I make a fool of myself and nobody likes me? Humorous. It's not just a party, it's a poolside bacchanalia. Impersonal. Yeah, it's just something to do, I guess. Desperate. I need to make this party count. Persuasive. Don't worry, a fun night out is exactly what you need. Inspirational. Sometimes all it takes is one magical night to turn your life around. Voice expresses who you are as a person. Some types of writing celebrate it and encourage personal voice, such as novel writing. Others discourage it, such as business memos. Two different writers could be writing a letter to a friend in an informal, casual manner about a summer event. One writer focuses on the people and the atmosphere. using lots of adjectives and long, winding sentences that emphasize the beauty and creativity at the event. The other writer writes short sentences with lots of humorous metaphors and similes that make the reader smile. So every writer has their own voice. And I'm mentioning voice separately because I know some writing programs really make a big point of voice, which I've sometimes heard confused with style and sometimes confused with tone. Okay, so the way we're talking about it, I would say it's more connected to tone right now, okay? Voice is who the readers hear, tone is the way you're doing the writing. It can be institutional or academic, like objective or formal, or it can be personal. You'll need to decide whether you want your tone to be informative or effective. Do you want to inform your readers or persuade them? In academic writing, like you do for school, you often lead towards an informative tone. It tries to avoid emotional appeals, or at least it appears to. Formal, think of a teacher talking to a class, like a high school teacher, not a younger teacher. Or it could be informal, like someone talking to their friend about a movie. So all that is a very long-winded way of discussing. Hang on, backing up. Is the tone of that writing serious or casual? And why? Why did they pick serious or why did they pick casual? And what is there about the piece that makes you think it's serious? What words make you think it's casual? Okay. Whew. I don't know if I'm just talking fast or what happened there. Okay. When the writer wrote this, what do you think the purpose was? And again, we're talking back to that main piece of writing about WASA. What was the purpose? Explain. Remember, we've talked before, there's three main purposes, right? To inform, in other words, to tell people about stuff, to persuade people, in other words, to try and convince them to do something, or to entertain people, like you're trying to amuse them in some way. So pick one of these types of purposes and give an example from the writing that supports your choice of purpose, right? So I think the writing was to inform because, and then you would explain what makes you think that, okay? When it says explain, you always have to give a reason. So the word because should almost always be in there. Who do you think is the intended audience for this piece of writing? Hang on, did we just do that or is that? Nope, similar. Okay. So we've talked about audience before, quite a bit yesterday. Who would be interested in this writing? Okay. So remember, there's two different types of audience. If you're walking into a movie and there's a bunch of people sitting there, they're the audience because they happen to be all in the same room. But when people are designing stuff, writing stuff, creating it, there's nobody in the room when they're doing that, but they're mentally picturing who might want to be in that room. And they're thinking about whether they're young or old or of a specific gender. Are they families? Are they single people? What's their income like? Education level, lifestyle, that kind of thing. Not all of those things are important for every type of writing, but it is important, especially for things like business writing or for advertising, because in that case, they're trying to make money. So they can tend to get very specific about who they're hoping is listening and trying to tailor the message to that. So WASA is like a nonprofit business, but it is still, yeah, I guess a little bit different than a business. I'm not intended to make money, but it is an organization that is trying to, in a sense, sell a certain product. So who is the audience for that piece of WASA writing? Do you think the form, style, and tone of this writing are appropriate to the audience that you identified in question 5? So you just told me who's the audience for this piece of WASA writing. And do you think it's effective? Now, I keep getting a lot of people saying, yes, I think it's effective, or yes, I think it's appropriate, but they don't really explain further. And I think it's because people aren't quite sure how to explain that. They're not really sure what it means. So think about, how is the form appropriate to the audience? How is the style appropriate to the audience? How is the tone appropriate to the audience? And give some examples from the text. So I'm going to give you an example from a different type of writing to show you what I mean. So this is a little piece from Junior National Geographic, and it's talking about a solar eclipse. The title actually is Total Solar Eclipse by Alison Shaw. And here's how it sounds. Hey, who turned out the lights? Sometimes the answer is the moon. About every 18 months, somewhere on Earth experiences a total solar eclipse when the moon completely blocks the sun. But for you, it's probably a special event. Total solar eclipses only occur in the same location about once every 375 years. During a total solar eclipse, the sky appears dark, the temperature drops, and some animals even change their behavior. Perhaps thinking it's nighttime, some cows will return to their barns, crickets chirp, and nocturnal bats take flight. But be careful. Direct light from the sun can burn the cells in your eyes, causing blindness. The sun is only completely blocked by the moon for a few moments during a total solar eclipse. So, to safely experience the solar show, use special purpose eclipse gases or a solar viewer to block the harmful rays. And I believe in the magazine article, they then show the kids how to build a solar viewer. Okay, so now I'm discussing, is this appropriate to our audience? So first of all, who's the audience? Well, this magazine article is written towards children as their audience. Its style is informal, right? Hey, who turned out the lights? That's not how you would write to your teacher, but it is how you talk to children. So its style is informal, which seems appropriate when writing to children who might not enjoy a more formal style. Its tone is casual, even humorous, which is an effective way to capture children's attention. The form of a magazine article is short and can be illustrated with lots of photographs, which makes it easy for children to read and understand. So it is an effective form for their intended audience. So we've talked a lot about format. Form is just another way of saying format. So different types of writing. So for each one of these, I tackled style, tone, form, and I explained why I think it's effective. So for this question, please don't just say, yes, it's effective. Tell me why you think it's effective, okay? All right. There are several words in this writing that may not be familiar to you, either because they are spelled incorrectly. Gee, I hope not. Let me go back and check that. Used in a way that you've not seen before, or are simply words that are not in your vocabulary. Choose 5 words that seem unusual or strange and try to find their meanings. Use any and every resource you can think of, including the context of what you've read, to discover the meaning of these unfamiliar words. I've added obvious resources would include dictionaries or a thesaurus. I don't know why they don't just say, look it up in the dictionary or thesaurus. I think somebody was trying to use a humorous tone and didn't quite succeed. Now I'm kind of curious about spelling mistakes. I'm sure I'll find lots of spelling mistakes, but they won't be in this part, I don't think. Yeah, no. Okay, I don't know why they said there were spelling mistakes there. That was weird. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, so this one, I think it's a fairly easy question. Pick up a word, look at its definition, tell me what it is. If you copy the definition directly from the dictionary, please simply write at the bottom of the page which dictionary you used. Like I looked this up at the online Webster dictionary. Here's the URL. Oh, I've got a paper Collins dictionary. I looked it up. Just tell me where you looked it up so it's obvious, okay? That way you're avoiding the issue of plagiarism. However, it does give you the option of discussing words that have a meaning that is different from what you're used to, or that you figured out using context clues. And you might want to discuss that instead rather than look up dictionary definitions, and that's fine as well. This is deliberately phrased in a very open-ended way that gives you freedom of choice, okay? So I've tried to go really in depth on this exercise because it's just one of those assignments that they're talking about so many different things at once that I think it makes it confusing, even though I think they were trying to make it kind of easy. So I did grab, let me see if this will work. Yep, a little video on tone. Hopefully
the future of your business is here. With Wix, you get advanced AI capabilities.
For more myself.
You've probably heard someone excuse away a rude email or text by saying something like, well, tone is hard to read in text. But in reality, with the well-constructed sentence, that's not true. Writers have been imparting tone into their sentences since the written word began. The difference is that people focus on it less these days, likely because everyone's in such a hurry. But truth be told, it takes more time to go back and explain what you actually meant in that rushed email than it would have to write the sentence carefully with tone in mind in the first place. To that purpose, today we'll talk about what tone is and some tips and tricks for imparting a purposeful tone into your writing. So, what is tone? Tone is how attitude and emotion are expressed in writing. Different tones are used for different audiences, and different tones are necessary to impart what you, as the author, are trying to communicate. These two counterparts, author and audience, work together to create and interpret tone. Let's talk about how to do that. As a writer, you first need to think about how you feel about the subject you're writing about. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you writing a scholarly article where you're trying to impart authenticity and professionalism? Are you writing a persuasive editorial where you're trying to impart passion about a topic? Are you writing a memo to your boss or your team about the details of a product? Or are you writing a creative piece where you want your character's emotions to come through loud and clear? Secondly, you need to consider what you want your reader to feel. Surprise, happiness, sadness, that they've gained knowledge they didn't have before. Those are the two factors that go into creating tone: intent and empathy. Now that you know what goes into tone, let's talk about some tools you have to accomplish the right tone for what you're writing. Vocabulary is one of your greatest tools. Choosing the right word for the job is perhaps the most important part of being a writer. Don't be afraid to pull out the thesaurus or a dictionary if you're having trouble finding the right word. Now, that doesn't mean choosing a fancy word just because it's there. Again, you want to pick the right word for what you're trying to communicate. Next, you have stylistic choices. For academic or professional writing, you might want to avoid contractions, sentence fragments, and other types of mechanisms more typically saved for informal or creative writing. Otherwise, use vocabulary and structure that are appropriate for what you're communicating. When it comes to making sure your audience hears you as you want them to, one of the best things you can do is to read your work out loud. Even if your work is meant to be read silently, people will still hear it in their minds. Reading your work aloud helps you hear the places that might trip up a reader or phrases that might hit in a way you don't intend. Tone is vital for creating a successful written work, so it's important to keep it at the forefront of your mind as you write and edit. Now, if you keep these principles in mind and carry out these practices, you'll become more and more comfortable with accomplishing the right tone in your writing.
Okay, I thought you did a beautiful job of explaining that.
It's Michael's lowest prices of the season. Scored big.
Friends. Okay. I only have about 5 minutes left, and we've really kind of covered, I think, everything. Is there anybody joining us today? Does anybody have any questions about what we've covered today or about a previous assignment that you have anything you want me to explain? No? Okay. We don't really, I think, have time to go on to the next assignment. We'll cover that tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me. We're ending a little bit early just because I think I probably talked a little bit fast. But thank you for joining us, and I will talk to everybody tomorrow.